Well, welcome to my father's house. Uh, my wife is here, and another disciple did show up. So, where two or more are gathered in his name, well, folks, it just happens. That's all I can tell you. God, the one that said he's going to build something, and I'm telling you, when he builds it, it's going to be built the way he wants it. I've tried several things, to build for him, and he said, just quit building and let me build. So I done quit building, but we're going to see in the very near future. My shirt here today has on it the Spirit of the Lord. Do you have the Spirit of the Lord? Is that what it says?
Yep.
Folks, the Spirit of the Lord that I'm talking about is the one that Jesus said was going to come from heaven after he got back up there. Now, Jesus had 40 days with his disciples, and the last thing, in all that 40 days, he was talking about the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God, the kingdom of God. I mean, I don't know what Jesus saw. I don't know what all happened, that third day when he came out of that tomb. All I can tell you is he saw a woman that he knew, and he told her, don't cling to me, don't touch me, something. I really don't know. I wasn't there. All I know is he said, I have not yet ascended to see my Father. So, but you go and tell my disciples, I'll see them shortly. And sure enough, Jesus went on up there to see his Father, and he shocked them when he showed up. I mean, he could just show up. He never had been able to just show up like that before. Kind of like the angels, if an angel just shows up, he shows up. But anyway, Jesus showed up, and he had 40 days with those disciples, and he talked to them about the kingdom of God. He was real interested in the kingdom of God, because it wasn't because he had read Matthew, Mark, or Luke, or John, though. No. But Jesus was interested in the kingdom of God, but he hadn't read Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. I don't know that he ever talked to Luke. He might have. Matthew and John, though, they got to walk and talk with him. Yep, they did. And he told them some amazing things. And I mean, they were shockers. But the day that they killed him, or the day that God had him killed, yeah, God said, I will strike down the shepherd. Yeah, that was God's plan, folks. That was the hardest plan Jesus had to get on with. But when he got to that mountain that night, after he had had that supper with his disciples, he was there, and he prayed, Father, if there's any other way, but not my will, but thine be done, if there is no other way. Folks, if there had been another way, I promise you, God would have made it. But God had a plan, and he worked a plan. And God's still working a plan, and the devil can't stop him. Nope. The devil lost in heaven, and he's losing on earth. Yeah, I'll just let y'all know that the court is fixing to convene, and it's not going to be the Supreme Court of the United States. So you don't have to worry about what that court's deciding. If you got something in that court It's just there. I'm talking about the court in heaven. Well, what court, Bob, are you talking about? Well, I'm talking about the one that Daniel saw years ago. His name was Daniel. And Daniel saw it, and he had to deal with Nebuchadnezzar. Now, if y'all folks don't know nothing about Nebuchadnezzar, you ought to find out that God made him king over everything. He was the ruler. God had made him the ruler. He had given Jerusalem into his hands. Jesus didn't have anything to do with it, folks. Nothing. Jesus didn't have a thing to do with it. But he found out about it. As he grew up, he learned about his Father in heaven. Yep. And by the time he was 30 years old, and John came out of the wilderness, his father got him to the river right on time. Yep. God's plan is right on schedule, folks. It don't make no difference whether I think it is or not. It's on schedule. He's got it already figured out, what he's going to do, what day it's going to happen. When God told Abraham that his children were going to be slaves for 400 years, and then he was going to judge the nation, he wasn't kidding. He wasn't kidding at all. And when Abraham took his son up on that mountain, because God said, I want you to take your son and I want you to sacrifice him, let me tell you, Abraham had full intention. If the Lord hadn't spoke from heaven and said, don't harm the child, he was dead. Abraham was fixing to kill his son. And I know he liked him. He liked him a lot. But he wanted to be obedient to God more than he wanted anything else. Some people today better get that way. Because if they don't, it's going to be trouble. Yeah, I thought about it a while ago. This was over 2,000 years ago. There were some disciples got arrested. Yep. Had them all in jail. They was fixing to have some fun with them the next morning. The guards were on guard duty. They got guards in the prison, ain't they? They got guards at the prison, folks. I went down and worked with the youth back in the 90s. They got guards. You don't mess with the guards. But if the guards don't do what they're supposed to do, there's trouble. Now, this is how much trouble it was back in that day. The ruler had put these in the jail, and he assigned the guards to guard them. The only thing was, God didn't leave them in jail till the next morning. Angels showed up. The angel gave him some instructions of where to go and what to do. And you know what them boys did? They went right where that angel told them to go, and they did what he told them to do. Yep. And it wasn't too long after that, they came looking, for them that they had in prison. They weren't there. So the ruler questioned all of the guards, and after questioning them, he put them all to death. They died. The disciples that they had in prison, they died later. Yep. Folks, that was 2,000 years ago. We're fixing to have the 4th of July, 2017. And guess what? That's Independence Day. Yep. And I done 10 minutes. Anyway, we're at my Father's house. And we've gathered, and it's on.